Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today's March 3rd, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? There's lots to cover today because obviously the last couple of days have been very active on both sides, and so I come yet again with Bakhmut with not good news. The Wagner units continue to push, and now they're just outside of Hromove. And they have managed to enter some parts of the city of Bakhmut. Officially, now the Ukrainians have retreated behind the Bakhmutska River. So now the eastern side of Bakhmut has been kind of let go by the Ukrainian army. And so now they're really defending just the city center and the west side of Bakhmut. So as you can see, the Russians continue to push on the north. They want to take control over this last road that goes through Hromove. And also they try to push more towards now Bakhmut rather than pushing towards Ivanivske and taking control of the 05-04 highway. So as you can see, the situation is very dire for the Ukrainians, but they're doubling down. They are defending the city at all costs, and we'll have to see in the next few days what's going to happen, if not weeks. I think the Ukrainian army is betting on the Rasputitsa, which has started because we're officially in March. It's spring season. And in Ukraine, this means just massive amounts of mud everywhere, insane thaw, which makes it very difficult for vehicles to move around. And so now the Russians have less choices in terms of movement, and they mostly will just completely rely on human waves for their attacks. So not that it's changed, because it's mostly been just human waves of attack, but now it's more than ever just that, because obviously vehicles cannot move as efficiently now. And so also it's the Ukrainians are expecting that next few weeks they're going to start their counteroffensive somewhere around beginning of April, mid-April. So they're betting on this counteroffensive to really weaken the Russian positions outside on other front lines, where like in Zaporizhia, in Donetsk city, close to Donetsk city. So I think that they're really hoping that by weakening the other front lines, there's going to be less pressure in Bakhmut. And perhaps they'll be able to also send more fresh units in Bakhmut in a few weeks with these new vehicles that they're getting, including the Bradleys, the CV90s, which I think are extremely important because they're very good in urban combat, especially the Bradleys. I think that they're just miles ahead from anything that Russia currently has in its stockpiles. So that's the situation in Bakhmut. The other thing I wanted to talk about is there's been also reports that Russia's accused Ukraine of sending sabotage groups in the Bryansk Oblast, as you can see here, in some random village in the middle of nowhere. But you can see Bryansk is obviously very close to Ukraine. They're accusing Ukraine of causing terrorist attacks within their villages. And my question is, why would Ukraine go for a small village in Bryansk, right? It has no strategic value for the Ukrainians. Right now, the main goal for Ukraine is to take back the occupied territories by Russia. It's not going within Bryansk and, starting low fires. And I'm talking about low fires as in, making referendums within Bryansk and taking over administrative buildings like Russia did back in 2014. Like, there's no interest in that. The main goal for Ukraine is to take back its territories. So I think that this was perhaps the work of the Freedom Russian Legion or whatever that picked up initiative, and it's feeling the Russian weakness, the Russian state, and its weakening, and so they're probably, they have some political ambitions by, starting low fires in Bryansk. Perhaps we'll see more of them somewhere in Kursk, Belgorod. We'll see, but I don't think this is a Ukrainian sabotage group or special Ukrainian forces, sending their troops, their best trained troops in Bryansk. It has no strategic value for them. And otherwise, the Russians continue. You can see the amount of forces they've committed to Kremina. They want to go towards Liman and then Slovyansk, but they're not really gaining any ground right now. There's back and forth fighting between the Ukrainians and the Russians in Kremina, but overall, they're not successful here. In Donetsk, you can see it's rather the same. The Russians are trying to take Avdiivka with massive losses here. And also there is visual confirmation that there was an SU-34 plane that was lost in Yanakiv today. And I'll talk about it later in my other slide. But overall, it's not successful here. And the last front that the Russians have miserably failed in is Vuhledar. There's a report that came out a day or two ago where it essentially confirmed that the Russians lost about 130 vehicles in Vuhledar alone in the last few weeks. That includes BMPs, all the random tanks that they've been throwing, even demining vehicles that they've thrown in Vuhledar. So it's a catastrophic failure for the Russians here, with thousands of soldiers, Russian soldiers, that have been lost. And this is really important because they're Russian soldiers. They're not Wagner soldiers that nobody cares about in Russia. They're actually, soldiers that have families and relatives back in Russia, and it's causing major outrage right now because every day they keep sending these soldiers and they keep dying. And now the tab of dead Russian soldiers is in the thousands here. So it's a catastrophic failure for Russia. In terms of their offensive in Vuhledar. So spring has arrived. The Ukrainians are betting on Rasputitsa to slow down this major offensive that the Russians started. And hopefully by early April, mid-April, we'll start seeing a lot of Ukrainian movement in Zaporizhia and in Bahamut, Bahamut, Kremina, Donetsk, to be able to counterattack. We'll see, and time will tell. So let's get back to the slides. And this is an interesting article that came out of USA Today. And so what I wanted to talk about is that Russia, essentially the title of this article is that Russia will be out of military tools by spring, and that is the comments of Kirill Budanov with his forecast. And he says that since February 24th, well, last few weeks, for this 1-year anniversary, he says that a notable new offensive has yet to materialize, but Russia has wasted already huge amounts of human resources, armaments, and materials. Its economy and production are no longer able to cover these losses. And if Russia's military fails in its aims this spring, it will be out of military tools, essentially have no more, secret weapons or jokers that they can, pull off for successful offensive in Ukraine. And I 100% agree. And there was a very interesting comment I wanted to share with you guys because I really agree with this. It's a random comment that was written on this article. And this commentator writes that so far, Russia has shown no willingness to look at their losses and decide that this war is an economic, political, and cultural loss for them, and that they should get out of this war as quickly as possible. They're like a poker player digging through the safe deposit box to find something else to toss in the pot alongside their wife's wedding ring and the deed to the house. This doesn't mean that they have a good hand, but they're really, really hoping they can bluff the other side into folding before they have to show their cards. So I really agree with this comment. I think that Russia is really playing a poker game, whereas they're really not getting any backup support. Some people are saying perhaps China is going to step in and help Russia with weapons, but I really don't think so. They really are dependent on the West's economic support in order for them to be major economic power. And the West has made it very clear that China cannot, if China commits to helping Russia militarily speaking, that is going to be a major red line in Europe, and the West are no longer going to, have partnerships with China. It's also going to be hurtful for us if China commits to that, but China doesn't want to commit themselves into losing war. They see how poorly the Russians have been performing in Ukraine, how terribly they've been performing. They haven't, for the past year, they have had tremendous losses. And China does not want to commit into a war that they know Russia is going to lose eventually. So I think that the collapse of Russia is getting very, very close. How close? Only time will tell, and we cannot predict the future. So this is the SU-34 that I was talking about earlier that crashed, and apparently, Ukraine takes credit for shooting it down, but now Russia says that it's their own air defense system that shut it down by mistake. Either way, it's great news because it's -1 jet fighter that is currently bombing either civilian targets or Ukrainian forces, and the SU-35 on average costs about $36 million. So that's a huge loss for the Russian Air Force. This is, an interesting article. Take it with a grain of salt. This could be just hallway, rumors and nothing more, nothing less. Because they've been saying the same thing about Putin, that he's gravely ill, that he's dying soon. Look at him, the way that he moves. And these rumors were spread around even before his invasion, and he still stands today. So either way, you can see that Kadyrov does not look good. This is him a year ago. This is him now. He looks like a balloon. And apparently with this article, it says that he's reportedly gravely ill with kidney problems, that they had to fly in a nephrologist from the United Arab Emirates. His name is Dr. Yazin Ibrahim El-Shahat, who's a doctor who's an expert in nephrology, dialysis, transplantation, and acute renal failure. So he sent one of the best doctors, and according to this article as well, Kadyrov is ill, has already become a drug addict, perhaps from all the drugs that he has to take. And also, he allegedly was poisoned. He thinks he was poisoned by some, random Russian agents, and therefore he does not trust the doctors from Russia. So we'll know once Kadyrov dies, because there's no longer going to be TikToks coming from him. I guarantee you that. So let's have the fingers crossed that that's what's going to happen, because Kadyrov has not only spread pain and suffering on the Ukrainian people, but also on the Chechen people for the last 30, 20-ish years since the Chechen war. And if there's one person that you wish no longer walks on this earth, is him, because he's an absolute terrible human being. So we'll see. If there's not going to be any TikToks anymore from Kadyrov, you know that he's probably somewhere 6 feet deep under the earth. Now, this is the last video I want to share with you guys. It's Russia's remaining last secret weapon. It's Babushka Witches. And here you can see they're performing a ritual where it's them performing a spiritual ritual about lifting sanctions on Russia and bringing a fast victory for the Russian Federation. So this is the last secret weapon that Russia has. So let's be very careful with these babushkas. I believe this spell gives them 100 copium points. However, they lose 10,000 influence points, as they look absolutely ridiculous in this video. Beware. Be very careful with these babushkas. They're severely brainwashed. So there you go, guys. This is the video for today. I'll keep you guys updated as to what's going on in Bahamut. Let's have our fingers crossed, and let's pray for the Ukrainian defenders. They're heroically defending Ukraine. But apart from that, that's the video for today. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.